Hello, it's April 30th, 2024, last day of the month. We all know what that means. I hope you're finishing the month strong, hitting your goals and objectives, and getting pumped up to do it again next month. As always, I'm finding the most interesting articles and posts on growth and marketing to help you grow your business. We have some great ones today. First up, a report from HockeyStack re-emphasizes the importance of word of mouth and revenue. Then, two rigorous studies that talk about the impact NPS has on online word of mouth. So NPS isn't completely dead yet, even though you may have read some negative things about it. Then from RB2B, Pete Crowley talks about an initiative they have to try to boost their word of mouth. And then finally, why do some companies fail to grow or struggle to grow post-investment? From Mosaic Growth Solutions, my company. So very exciting stuff. Stay tuned and we will get started. Okay, I have some great articles for us to go through. First up from HockeyStack, this is a report they put together with the title, The State of First Touch, Last Touch, Self-Reported Attribution and Revenue. And they go through a lot of different attribution aspects here. The study was put together last year from February 1st, 2023 to December 31st. With over 8,500 answers from 36 B2B SaaS companies. So definitely check out this report if you're interested in how First Touch compares to Last Touch when they look at these companies. But what I'm really interested in is the self-reported attribution and how it relates to word of mouth. And so I'm just trying to emphasize how important word of mouth is when we look at the data. So yesterday I talked about Dave Gerhardt talking about the importance of word of mouth. I supported that. But when we actually look at the data, it continues to stress how important it is. So this is self-reported attribution from the audience I just described. When they look at the number of conversions, it's 18% of the conversions driven. But from a revenue perspective, it's almost 24% driven by people self-reporting it was done by word of mouth. And so this is the second highest source of revenue behind search when people are self-reporting. But when we think about what search is comprised of, organic and paid search, a huge percentage of that revenue is going to come from brand searches, which are likely a good percentage of them are coming from word of mouth. And then you look at social media, which is, it could be a pretty close proxy for word of mouth as well. And then referral and review sites. So when you add those things up, it's very likely word of mouth is the number one source of revenue from a self-reported attribution standpoint. I'd love to see additional data on this, but regardless, even if you said none of that was related to word of mouth, which cannot be accurate, but even if you said that, it's still the second biggest driver from a self-reported attribution standpoint of revenue. So again, this is why I talk about word of mouth so much, is because it's actually driving revenue. And so you need to figure out A, how you can measure it, and B, what you can do to improve it. Okay, so we see in the data the importance of word of mouth. I've shared previous things before about it, but how do we understand it, how we can impact word of mouth, and how can we track it? And I have two studies here, both which are measuring the same thing, which is the link between Net Promoter Score and online word of mouth behavior. And so, first off, I just want to acknowledge that NPS has sort of a negative reputation right now, especially in academia, and for good reason. Let me just share why they address this in this first study. Researchers identified several concerns with the original NPS study. For example, Reichheld analyzed past but not future sales growth rates by using simple correlations and focus on static NPS levels measured at one point in time. These issues, among others identified by critics, render the claim by Reichheld highly questionable and as such call into question the utility of NPS as a predictor of future sales growth. So NPS was promised as this thing, the one figure you need to know for growth, but the way the research was done doesn't actually support that, and Reichheld has actually updated his methodology. The thing about NPS, though, is actually measuring people's willingness to refer a product to a friend or family member. And so these studies go into whether people actually do that. And that's the question they're answering. So let's dive in here and see what they have to say. And so this first study was done on almost 5,000 hotel guests. And it enables a comparison between the intentions suggested by their individual promoter scores and the actual online word of mouth behavior they subsequently engaged in on various online platforms. The findings of the study revealed that promoter scores have a significant positive effect on online message valence. And so this first study says, yes, if people are going to be promoters, they are actually going to promote online. It has a significant positive effect. The second study, which is done in 2 different industries, they based on a sample of 189 customers, their promoter scores and corresponding online word of mouth, the results show there is a positive relationship between customers' promoter scores and the valence of online messages. So once again, if people say they're going to refer, if people are going to, their net promoter score is tied to the valence or what they say online. And so it is actually, the research shows in both of these studies that people actually do take action against what they say, and what they do actually reflects in the score that they gave. And so the results show that customers who provide high promoter scores are more likely to spread positive online word of mouth, and the same thing for the negative. Furthermore, this positive relationship is stronger for customers who spread more compared to less online word of mouth messages. So again, the data supports this. It's showing that if you're going to be a promoter, you do promote positively. If you're going to be a detractor, you do share messages, but negatively. One of the interesting things here is that if we look at the data, so here you can see this is the days between the survey and when they actually shared online about their experience. But this is one of the things I found interesting. Detractors actually share almost twice as many messages as promoters. And so one of the things to think about is what can you do to move detractors to passives, because they do talk more often. They speak more frequently than promoters. And if we look at this data table here, you can see how it's broken down in terms of detractors shared 56 negative messages, 7 neutral, 2 positive. Promoters did 2 negative messages and 27 positive messages. So they did take action, and it reflected their actual score. So the question is, like, what does this mean for us? First, I do want to say that none of the companies they studied were SaaS. So potentially SaaS customers behave differently. So it would be great to have research on that to see whether SaaS customers behave differently. People giving NPS scores for SaaS behave differently. So while these studies show that there is that relationship within the industries they studied, we'd like to see that for SaaS. The second thing is there anything we can do to change NPS scores? And if we do change it, does it impact word of mouth within our individual company? I think that's key. These studies show that the relationship exists, but can we, when we're actually looking at our jobs, have the same impact if we are able to improve NPS scores, and does that translate into word of mouth? And then the third thing to consider with these studies is, like, what does this mean for us in our workday? If we're tracking NPS, is that related to the amount of word of mouth we're getting? Can we actually take action based upon the data we're seeing based on these studies? And so it'd be great to get additional data, but if you're looking to understand the impact of how you can impact word of mouth, how you can track it, NPS scores are there, and there is definitely research supporting the idea that those NPS scores actually translate into online word of mouth. So is there any sort of specific tactical things we could take advantage of this? And that's why I wanted to share Pete Crowley's post, who's head of growth at RB2B. And they just introduced RB2B rewards. And basically, this is a program to try to accelerate word of mouth. He says select users will be invited to share their RB2B experiences on LinkedIn. Participants will be rewarded with free access to our Pro plan, which includes integrations, filtering, and more. He says, why will this work? Authentic user stories build trust far more effectively than any company-generated content. And so this is just the sort of fundamental premise behind word of mouth. If you see something or you hear something from someone you trust, you're much more likely to believe that opinion rather than from the company directly. and it also expands the network. So this is just a program to accelerate word of mouth. I asked Pete if he was going to share data, and he said he would. So I'll look forward to seeing that. When he does share it, I will share it here as well. So I'm excited to see what the result is from a word of mouth perspective from this program, because this is a tactical way to help build your word. The last art I'm going to cover is one from us: why some companies struggle with fast growth post-investment. We work a lot with companies who have recently received private equity investment, and their paths to growth are different. And the ones that have the biggest challenges have these four things in common, which is one, key stakeholders do not buy into the fact that future growth will require a fundamentally different approach. And so a lot of these companies have either been founder-led or sales-led growth motions, and they were successful with it. And so they don't see the need to fix it. But if they keep on that same path, they quickly realize it doesn't scale the way they anticipated. And so that can be a challenge. Second, the organization lacks the necessary culture and mindset for fast growth. And this is something we run into quite frequently, is that there's not a growth readiness there. They don't have a growth vision. They're not aligned. There's not a growth culture. And so putting those in place is absolutely critical for driving growth. The third thing is marketing is undervalued. Like I said, a lot of these are founder-led or sales-led growth companies. That's how they achieve their initial growth on the path to investment. And so they haven't spent a lot of time with marketing, so they just don't realize the value it has. And so because they are not investing in marketing, they're leaving growth on the table. And so they don't see that it could drive meaningful, scalable value. But once they're able to enable that, they do see that value out of it. But that can be a challenge as well. And finally, some companies intentionally pause on their growth to find a marketing leader. And the challenge here is that the pressure is still on them to grow. So even if they're like, hey, we're waiting to get a marketing leader, 6 months down the line, or it takes 6 to 12 months to find someone, they're not going to get that amount of time to wait. They have to start growing now. And so they have to find a solution to this. And for all four of these, companies need to find a solution. They need to address these causes that are delaying their growth in order to find that transformational quick growth. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. That's it for me today. One, you see the power of word of mouth in driving revenue. Two, you see the connection between NPS and word of mouth. Three, you see a tactical way of actually trying to drive word of mouth from RB2B and Pete Crowley. And four, you see some of the challenges that companies have when they're trying to achieve fast growth after they've received investment. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.